Guyana, me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Welcome to Globespan Television 24/7. Tonight we're broadcasting live from New York with all our listeners in hand, and also this program, I should say, is made available by Mr. Noir Singh. He's the CEO for Globespan Television, and Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin, our technical directors. Thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 gentlemen here tonight on the program. Mr. Joseph Prasad, an engineer and former personal advisor to Dr. Chedi Jagan. And we have Mr. Jinnaman Rahman. He is a journalist and the president of the Rice Farmers Association. Our topic tonight will be government planning, development projects, and the future of rice and the sugar industry. But before I should go on to talk to our guest, I would like to make it clear that the views expressed tonight on Globespan Television are those solely of our guests and not necessarily management of Globespan Television. I want to say again that we can be heard on Facebook and YouTube. And please tune in to listen to us because it's a very, very good program tonight. And also, finally, we are a neutral, fair, and balanced television station. Tonight, again, welcome Mr. Joseph Prasad. Joe, welcome. Mr. Joseph Prasad, you're on mute. Mr. Jinnaman Rahman, welcome to the program.
Okay, welcome, Dr. Rose. Thank you very much.
Mr. Prasad, you're on mute.
I think he's rejoining, Dr. Rose. Just give him a moment.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Rahman, let me first deal with you. Now, give us a background of yourself. Tell our listeners who you are and so forth, briefly.
I don't know if you can see me clearly, Dr. Rose.
We are seeing you clearly.
Okay. Well, as you know, I grew up in the farming industry. I've always been doing agriculture, all sorts of agriculture that way you can think about. So basically, I grew up as a farmer. I still do farming, plant mainly rice. We're also I'm a journalist by profession, and I'm the chairman currently of the National Farmers Organization, which was set up in 1980, called the National Farmers Organization, with myself, my brother, and a number of other people. My brother passed away in 2018. So I have the honor of actually carrying on the work that he was doing, the work that my father was doing, who was also one of the founding members of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, which was set up in 1943. So we have a long tradition of activism in agriculture, not only as farmers, but also representing farmers on a voluntary basis. So that's my background. The other things that I do, which probably we'll talk about as we go along.
Where are you from? Where are you planting rice?
I was born right here at a village called Leddystein, East Bank, Essequibo. It's about 2 miles away from Parika. So people will know that area. And we have an estate called Ramanville, where we was named after my father. I have a number of relatives who are shareholders of our company, Abdul Rahman and Sons Limited. And we embark on a lot of other things at the moment. One of my nephews is developing a shrimp farm, which is the only shrimp farm at the moment in the country. So we're really involved in agriculture in a big way and in general. Okay.
So before we waiting on Mr. Joseph Prasad to be on the program, but I got a few questions for you. One of the questions is, we are experiencing a drought in Guyana, of which you are fully aware, and somehow the meteorological office is saying that this might be extended until August, possibly. Before it was May, August. How is the drought affecting rice farmers and cash crop farmers in your area?
It's not extreme at the moment, but there are signs that there will be an extensive period of drought. The administration knows that because they've said it. So, but I don't see them putting anything in place that will mitigate what is to come. And if that comes, Guyana will be in a very serious crisis. We may have to import food, which we are already doing, as you probably know. So I really don't know what is going to happen. We have experienced, as you know, this kind of situation before, and we managed to rescue it. But I think that
how it was rescued before.
Well, fortunately, the rain began to fall, and so nature took its course. It wasn't as a result of any administrative activity. But I think more can be done to preserve water. You see, the problem is that, look, we have an engineer, Joe, which I think he knows more than me about drainage and irrigation as an engineer. The problem is that we haven't built what is called conservancy that can actually retain water for a considerable period of time, so that the water at this moment in places like Essequibo Coast and so on, they're experiencing salt water in the river, which they normally use to get water to cultivate their crops, but now they're experiencing salt water. So that tells you what is going to happen in the back dams where I visited recently, Parika back dam. Farmers have to pump water into their cash crop, and well, of course, the rice has been reaped already here and around the country, but a lot of farmers have plowed back their lands and are waiting, hopefully, to get rain to come in. I don't think they will get water through the irrigation process. Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Joseph Prasad, to the program. As I said before, you're an engineer and a former personal advisor to the late Dr. Chedi Jagan. Mr. Joseph Prasad, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. Thank you, Mr. Rahman, and all the listeners.
Yeah, I must say thanks to our listeners too and all our sponsors tonight. A very special thanks to all of you. Mr. Prasad, I want to ask you a question. You from the quarantine, I know you lived in Toronto, but you visit Guyana regularly, 4, 5, 6 times a year. And you were a rice farmer. But this year, the report is saying from most of the major rice Farmers Association and millers and everything else, that the quarantine alone stands to lose $1 billion in rice because of the bugs. Is that true? And if so, what could have been done to avoid this calamity?
Okay, the first thing in the rice industry, I can go on and talk for an hour what some of the problems are. With the present bug situation and the dry weather, that encourages the bugs. But you see, I have said before in the past that the British, what they did, peasantry farmers. What I'm going to end up with is that we should have plain spraying in a large scale like they do in Louisiana and all these places. But the way the lands were designed by the British, we had one guy have 2 acres, the next one got 4 acres, the next one. So everybody handled their own little thing. You have trees in the fields, hence you cannot spray. You cannot get a plane, no individual. Rice cultivation would sooner or later have to go large scale. And if my projection is right, if you do a land use planning for 100 years, all those lands might become houses because your population might go to about 5 million in 10 years. Hence, because you cannot grow rice, even that, they never cater that you're going to have big tractors and combines cutting rice. It was all peasantry. Man was doing things by hand. And that's how it was, but it all changed. And since it changed, they went to 2 crops. They used to do 1 crops per year a long time. So now you have all these encouraging all these bugs, etc. all the time. They live and hide everywhere else. And a dry weather it come, but they would have to plan. Like we talk about planning, not only for agriculture, there's planning for the whole country, which I don't see anything positive being done in that. You take the traffic on the road, etc. So with respect to agriculture and rice and sugar, it's in trouble because there's also a shortage of workers. Maybe the bugs would not have been to that extent if they had enough workers in the quarantine, because most of the workers are going for higher paid jobs in Georgetown, where you have more construction. Nobody wants to work in sugar, the ashes. Nobody wants to work on the dust in rice, you know, and the mud. So they're all going there. In Trinidad, they closed rice and sugar. So there's a great challenge to the government right now. Now, with all these farmers taking big losses, there, I have been speaking to many of them from here. I just got back here a month now. And many of these farmers are telling me the weather is dry, that some of their lands, dry weather, it caught fire and some of the rice also burnt. And in addition to that, these bugs, you can't control them. They get so many of them, you know, outnumbered. That happened sometime before while I was large scale in the rice too. We had that, but it was managed to be controlled to an extent because we had enough workers to go and spray in the morning and in the afternoon when the weather is cold. Am I right, Mr. Rahman?
That's correct, yes.
So there are lots to be done there, Dr. Rose, in the planning, not only for rice and sugar, in the planning.
So you're saying because of the drought, the bugs came along?
Lots more, yeah. Lots more. Once the weather is so dry, you have lots of bugs everywhere.
Dr. Rose, we have a really serious crisis that nobody wants to talk about. You see, our rice lands are overworked. I mean, Joe would know this.
Yeah.
We move from 1 crop a year to 2 crops a year. And if some of these farmers are so greedy that if they were to have the space to go 3 crops a year, they will do that. And the central point, Dr. Rose, is about planning. We have what is called an anarchy of development in this country. There is no planning. The only man who had some level of planning in this country was Mr. Burnham, but he's a coarse person when you talk about agriculture and when you talk about these type of things. But the reality is that we don't have any strategy to deal with agriculture. Fact of the matter is that they are setting targets without the consultation of the people who are producing rice and sugar or other things. It's an economy that is run on the basis of anarchy. There's no planning. If you were to ask any one of these agricultural officers to give you a figure of the acreage of any one of the crops that we grow in any of the regions, they will be unable to tell you. And if you ask them also, and I've done this before, tell us how many dairy farmers you got, how many what you call cash crop farmers, how many rice farmers you have, and how many acres each of them have got. They don't have that record. They were scrambling last year when I went to a meeting in the region to discuss the question of the distribution of grants to farmers during the flooding period. And they were discriminating against farmers because they were only given farmers who were either supporters or friends of the ruling administration. So a large section of African Guyanese were not on their list. And when we collected the list of those farmers and took them to the Minister of Agriculture, then that was only then those African Guyanese farmers who got some relief. So it's an unplanned economy. And I mean, we can, as Joe said, we can talk the whole night about these problems that we have. So we'll leave you to question us on things that you think might be of importance to us.
Now,
you said you want to talk about
when
rice
you talk
and
about planning, what are you talking about? Planning what in the rice industry? What planning is needed in the rice industry?
Well, the crisis we face here is that the industry is totally controlled economically by the rice millers. And they have a monopoly because the rice farmers don't own the rice mills. So because of the inclement weather conditions, the farmers, when they harvest their paddy, they have to rush it to the rice mill as quickly as possible. And it's stored up there in silos. And they get paid when the rice is sold or when there's an exportation of rice. So if you were to compare that if the farmers were to have control over the mills, instead of selling out the mills to private ownership, and if you had given them to farmers in the different areas where those mills were, they would have formed co-ops, they would have owned the mill, they would have controlled the management of it, and they would have been able to get more money from the rice industry. Rice is not an economic viability unless you can farm more than 100 acres of rice, or 50 to 100 acres. Anybody will tell you it's an unprofitable exercise. Hence, a lot of small farmers have got to resort to all kinds of things. Cash farming, they have to do cattle farming, then they have to do taxing. That's the reality of the situation. That's how they survive. People who eat rice have no understanding of how rice is grown and the kind of problems that the farmers suffer. They run a risk. The farmers run a risk. What happens now, Dr. Rose, when we have this drought? What happens now that we experience this blast situation? What compensation, what prevention is there? What it is that the administration is doing for them to be able to recultivate? That's the problem we have. So the farmers are the ones who feel the brunt of supplying food to people's table without any compensation. We can go into the record about the amount of money that comes from rice, foreign exchange, the second largest foreign exchange in this country, going into billions, over $50 billion in foreign exchange. How is that money spent, Dr. Rose? What would they do with it? The only thing I can tell you that happens is that we have, I mean, to give some credit to this administration, they've been engaged rigidly in drainage and irrigation and building up roads and so on. But apart from that, what it is that they have contributed to the development of the farming industry. They could have used some of that money to set up an agricultural bank to give farmers low interest, 2 or 3%, so that they can have revolving loans and that they'll have a guarantee so that they could actually have some kind of control over their livelihood. So these are...
I just want to interrupt you. Are you telling our listeners that rice is not productive, is not profitable?
Well, I've just said that, Dr. Rose. It's not a profitable exercise. And that's why small farmers, and we don't have, even though Guyana is the only cooperative republic in the world, you ask yourself, why are these farmers are not coming together? As Brother Joe Prasad said, unless you have large-scale farming through the form of big farmers owning thousands of acres or state-run farms or cooperatives, we're not going to be able to develop agriculture in the way in which we should. There's no guarantee, there's no security.
But rice has increased significantly over the past few years. What's the price of a bag of paddy today?
Well, it's about 4,000. It depends on the grade.
What's the cost to produce a bag of paddy?
It depends on the grade of the paddy, but approximately $3,000 to $4,000 a bag. But we don't measure bags anymore, Dr. Rose. We harvest in containers, so that is taken to the mill. So you don't bag anything anymore. You have to talk about tons and pounds and so on if you want.
No, but the rice farmers will sell to the rice millers bags, paddy in bags.
No, they don't sell bags, Dr. Rose. They sell the trailers or truck goes, picks up the paddy from the field into and there you have 100 bags approximately that goes into those trailers, and they empty them into the hull, which is then taken up into the silos. So what the farmers they weigh the trailer or the truck that comes into the factory, and so it's just about the weight in relation to tons when they exclude the weight of the trailer or the truck. Okay. So a trailer or truck carries about approximately 75 to 100 bags of paddy, if you want to get an understanding of how that works.
Mr. Prasad, I want to ask you the same question. All the time, from what I have seen, rice farmers have been building big houses. They have been buying huge combines. Each home, and I'm from the Quarantine to Quarantine, a rice farmer, they have 2, 3 cars there. They have 2 tractors. They have a rice combine. How is it they can have all this machinery and building a big house and telling our listeners that rice is not profitable?
Okay, most of these tractors and these things you're seeing there was built some years ago on these houses. In addition to that, lots of it was not built by rice money. Lots of these things were built by foreigners, children, everybody helping to buy the equipment, etc. I had 3 combine and 6 tractors, and I never get back any money that I invested in Guyana on all these things. And they think I am a very careful manager. I have a manager I trusted, etc. What is happening in the rice industry is that when the British designed, like I said before, they do it in small acreages. So Tom would be taking his tractor and damage the dams. You know that long time, all these long pumps you see on the road, we never had them. They had check sluices. that block the water for the highlands and then release the water for the lowlands. But now everybody in the crab dance, they all want to plant now and plant now. And so they had to get pumps to pump the water. And that's one problem. And those pumps now damage the dams. The tractors damage the dam. They were not designed to use big tractors on these dams. So that's one problem. Number two problem, the economy is changing. We have shortage of workers, as I have said some years ago. I wrote even when the PPP said they're going to create over 50,000 jobs in the last campaign. If you read back by the impact of the fleeting trickle oil boom that I wrote in the papers, I said it will be much more than 50,000 jobs. But you don't have the people for it, and this is suffering additional. In addition to that, the price for rice and sugar is fixed on the international market, and the cost of production is higher. Hence, that's another problem. And now, with this bug here, right, I am very distressed. Government would have to come up to subsidize these farmers, or else we'll be in trouble, because without bugs, Trinidad stopped rice and sugar. You know, so we are in very serious trouble here with the rice and sugar. Government would have to subsidize them. So not only bugs is the problem, like workers. You see, the government now is bringing in 500 workers from Bangladesh. Now we got to bring thousands more of workers from everywhere because you don't have them. This is what I have talked before, and I wrote to the government, advised them on not this budget, the 23 budget, the 22 budget, and I wrote it before that if you put an overheated budget, you're going to create inflation. You're not going to get the 4 M's: man, money, machine, and material. Right now, they don't have manpower to spray your rice bugs.
Well, what is an overheated budget?
Pardon me?
What do you mean by an overheated budget?
Oh, overheated budget, if you only got so much resources in the country, so much manpower, so much engineers, so much doctors, so much workers for everything. That's man. You got only so much tractors and combines. You only got so much machines, only so much material in the country, and only so much money. Not you're borrowing money to do things, the government. Now, they want to do too many things. Building streets everywhere. Taking overheated means you're doing too much. You want to do too many things when you don't have the 4 M's, as I told you, there to do it. That's why you're bringing in workers. That was very, very serious thing I told them, and they're still doing it. You know, they take the workers, make everybody contractors, doing streets everywhere and doing.
But how an overheated budget causes inflation?
When you have too many things to do and you don't have the workers, as an example, you want people to work, you got to pay them more money, or else you do without. Like, take as an example, in the rice industry, a guy would go and operate a tractor for $5,000 a year ago. Now, you don't pay that guy $8,000, he doesn't go there. You got to beg him, and he might want $9,000. A combine operator used to work for $9,000 a day a year ago, got operating a combine. He is now wanting $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 because there are no operators. Because everybody going to work in Georgetown we're in construction. So that's what overheated budget is doing, attracting people at different places. This is what happened in Trinidad. A carpenter, a skilled worker was working for $20 per day. It went to, from $20, it went to $120. And inflation. So when you rent a property now, a place that was being rent like Valsain was going for $2,500, right? Because of too many people now pouring in the country for work and shelter. In Guyana case, that's why they have to bring workers in. So all that is inflation.
Dr. Rose, in addition to what Joe is saying.
No, I just want to say something. I thought inflation, there are many reasons for inflation, but I think in Guyana, one of the reasons because of the drought, there are not enough cash crops. Greens and vegetables have gone up tremendously. I know this for a fact. Even the rearing of chicken, that has been reduced, and the prices have gone up as well. So everything the prices have gone up for, and I think that's what's causing inflation, a shortage of commodities.
Supply and demand.
But Dr. Rose, it's a contributory factor what Joe is saying. The cost of living mainly to do with the cost of food and the low wages that people are having. You know that there has been a teacher strike recently, which shocked the nation because nobody expected that level of determination to actually stay out of the classroom. And none of these teachers are unpatriotic. They were forced to actually do that, and that strike has not concluded in the sense of it just being called off temporarily. So we said in the beginning of this program, Dr. Rose, that there is no planning, there is no development strategy as to how we develop our economy in a way in which, if we are going to invest in whatever industry, and we have not developed this administration has not gone into developing any industry, even in terms of agricultural industries, they have not developed anything in any serious way. So if you're going to invest, you have to train people to actually do that. The oil industry, when they found oil and they developed the oil industry, they had to get technical people to fill those vacancies. And they had to train a lot of Guyanese to meet the demands of getting work for Guyanese. But they had to bring other people from abroad, more technical people. So if you're going to develop something, you have to have the necessary, as Joe said, the machinery, the manpower to actually do that. And if you don't, then you're not going to be able to do that. Dr. Rose, I don't know if you want us to spend our attention a little bit about what other models of economic development in terms of agriculture that we can use in Guyana, that has been used to some extent to mitigate all these problems. Because what we are facing here, Dr. Rose, is a perpetual problem, a perpetual crisis that the administration or even the opposition is not talking about. We have a useless opposition. They're not saying anything about what is going on in the country. They are wagging the tail. They are running after the tail of the dog rather than actually giving some kind of perspective as to what needs to be done. You cannot, Dr. Rose.
When you say other models of agriculture, what do you mean?
Okay, the model of agriculture to help farmers who are the producers, who are the real producers of wealth, of food in this country, are the ones that needs to be able to put them in the situation to do that. We have to implement the kind of policy, like for instance, we need to have an agricultural industrial bank that can lend farmers money on a rotation basis. We also need to be able to set up in the main agricultural areas what is called machinery pool, and you don't have to do what Joe did, have to spend millions of dollars of buying all these machinery that can only work for 6 months, and the rest of 6 months they're lying. What if you have machinery pools in the different areas? Then what will happen is that the farmers don't have to spend that amount of money of buying all these machineries. If you have a proper machinery pool, you have proper engineers to look after those machines after you cultivate the land. And so when the crop comes, those machines are ready to harvest. we had part of that. I remember as a young fellow growing up, we had a kind of system like that, partially implemented during the colonial times. And so therefore, you don't, the farmers don't have to go and invest. You talked about, you know, it remind me of what Basil Williams, the PNC guy, used to say about the Indians. He said that when he goes, he's talking about farmers being poor. But he said when you go around in these areas, you see a lot of tractors and big houses. But Mr. Basil Williams never investigated, as Joe said, the level of investment, the fact that every single member of that family is involved in the production and productivity, contributing even when they're children abroad. I remember my brother from Trinidad used to send parts here to Guyana during the Burnham period when we couldn't get foreign exchange. That is the level at which the farmers have got the sacrifices they make that people do not understand. They don't understand that. And I don't blame them for not understanding, because those who are running the country themselves don't understand the level of sacrifice that these people are making to feed the nation. That's the
Okay.
problem we have.
Rice agriculture has been the backbone in Guyana, rice and sugar in particular. Even though we have oil now, oil will not last forever. But rice and sugar, going back to agriculture, will be something that we will have to do continuously. Now, before I turn to sugar, let me ask you one question about rice, Mr. Prasad. Rice has been known to have one crop, two crops. How many crops are they planting now every year?
Two
But
crops.
that has not changed.
No, it changed from one crop. It was one crop long time ago, but it changed to two crops now. But they also did lots of research and brought different variety of rice that you can reap 2 times per year. A long time ago as well, they had rice that would take longer period to get ready. But the rice industry needs some serious planning and innovation at this present time. We would have to look at those lands along the coast, because in about next 5 years, you will have people to have houses out there, to live there. Population going to increase drastically because there are lots of construction will go if we got more oil money in it. Now, what needs to be done is that the lands have to be taken up. I have suggested this government some years ago in 2020 on the bridge from Suriname to go and connect to Brazil, or build a road or a railway from Brazil to a deep harbor place in Bobis there, so that we can connect Brazil and provide that. They can even go and share half the cost of putting the railway or the road. But what is going to happen there, the land's going to be opened up. And you take this road to Supanam as well, right across there. So you and connect to Georgetown, everywhere else. When I advised the vice president to put a hold on the harbor bridge in Georgetown there at that time. And let's see that planning, how it works. You're opening up the lands for large-scale agriculture. The cost of production, when people are how they are doing rice now, is very high, and the export market price is fixed. But if you do large scale, a guy get 2,000, or they got a co-op and they get 2,000-3,000 acres, then right there you have a small mill that mill the paddy. You have your equipment there. You don't have to repair dams. You dig your own dams and trenches, your own irrigation, you know, and you can be at the front by the Kanji Creek there. You get water from there. You can put a well like in Louisiana, and the different depths. You pump water. You open each hydrant, and you are at home, and your land is pumped with water. And then you got plane doing most of the work. You got to do rice with laser. The land has to be great level. So the farmers today, all along Guyana doing rice, are in very strenuous situation. If in Louisiana, the tractors got a laser in it, and to make sure the land is very level. So
Mr.
that's
Rahman
how
mentioned, Mr. Mahman, cutting you. Mr. Mahman mentioned about rice millers controlling everything. Before, from what my research has shown me, a lot of people used to own rice mills before. But
right.
I think now the predominant owners of rice mill are, I think it's Nanprasad and Hack Brothers. Am I right?
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct.
So what happened to the other rice owners of rice mill? They just give it up like that?
Yes,
No,
because they couldn't compete.
They
They
couldn't
couldn't
compete.
compete with these big people who buy plenty of rice, be able to make a smaller profit, and they would put their rice in the market in quarantine cheaper than what the small guys can do, the small millers can do. So there was a competition. That's a competitive progress, and we expect such revolution in any industry, and that's okay. But the problem is now you've got to go and open past roads and bridges and open to do large scale farming to be competitive, you know, and that's the only way, or else rice is in trouble.
It is also my understanding that the owners of these rice mills do lend the farmers money to plant. And as they reap, they will collect the money back.
That's correct.
The reason for that, Dr. Rose, it is that they had advantage, because if you lend them money, then obviously the contract is that you have to supply, that you have to supply them with the paddy that you reap. So they have a control. That's the level of control that they exercise, and that is the kind of control they have as in relation to the price they give to the rice farmers. It's an open market, and so therefore all these elements of market forces comes into being. That's why I was saying to you, we need to look into different models of development. If you look, we have a rice mill at a cooperative rice mill at Wauganugan. I've spoken to the Minister of Agriculture. I've spoken to the Minister of Labor, where the co-op mill comes under the Ministry of Labor. Right now, the mill was sold or leased. That mill is one of the oldest cooperative entity in the country. And all the farmers on the west coast of the east bank of Escobar used to supply, there were co-op members, and the administration did very little to actually enhance the mill to meet the modern facilities to mill rice and so on. So what I'm saying to you, Dr. Rose, is that none of these two parties, the PPP and the PNC, forget the AFC, they're just a waste of time. They have no interest in the rice farmers. They don't have any interest in agriculture in general. In fact, I will go to the extent to say, when you look at those in Parliament, which one of them know anything about agriculture? Which one of them on both sides? I've got any experience with
but this government has spent a lot of money in agriculture, developing irrigation, providing things to spray your rice and so forth. They've invested heavily in rice farmers.
They give it to people who are apprentices.
Why would you say that the government don't invest in rice farmers? This government has done more than any other government in investing in rice farmers.
That is true, but they do it because a lot of these rice farmers are traditionally supporters of the PPP. I told you earlier where the African farmers were isolated, and when they had flooding, they didn't give them any until we went into those areas, the African areas, and then got their names and details, and then give it to the Minister of Agriculture.
So you're saying that the black rice farmers do not get no compensation, nothing from the government, only the Indian rice farmers?
Not in relation to your, Dr. Rose, we haven't moved away from the paramountcy of the party, which was created by the PNC. The PPP follows that rigidly. So you can call Freedom House if you have a problem, rather than calling the Minister of Agriculture. And then Freedom House calls the relevant people. That is how it operates, Dr. Rose. And if you doubt me, try it. Try it, and you will see for yourself That's what has happened. What happens? We have a very tribalist society. We have not moved away from the tribalism.
Are you telling our listeners that this government do not give black rice farmers any assistance? They only give it to Indians because Indians are the supporters?
Yes, I'm saying that. And I challenge them to show me where in the Danamsel area and in all the other areas where the where African Guyanese are. Let them show us what support and help they've given to any of them individually, as individual farmers. They have not. And I'm speaking here as a representative of farmers. I live here. I meet farmers every day.
I will check this with the Minister of Agriculture to see if it's true.
Look, today I called the Minister of Agriculture 2 times, send the messages, and he will not respond. They don't respond to you when you're critical of them, right? He says that I'm critical of him. I am not anti-government. We have to work with any government that is in office, even though we may not like the personalities.
Yeah, you're the president of the National Rice Farmers Association, am I right?
Yes.
So what was the function of your organization?
We're a voluntary organization. We as farmers come together. We as farmers come together. We're basically like a trade union, Dr. Rose. Because of the problems that farmers face, we have to come together as farmers to actually make representation. When we go to these meetings, these outreach meetings, we raise our issues there as the voice of the farmers, because a lot of the farmers are incapable of actually representing themselves or even speaking at public meetings. So that's basically what we are. We don't get subsidies. We don't get any stipend or things like that. So if we don't do that, Dr. Rose, the situation will be worse. I'm the secretary for the Borganugan Namrik Water Users Association. That's a statutory body. And the most we get is stipend when we go to meetings. And we have to go many times to the back dams to check to see whether the government machinery and the contractors who are supposed to clean the trenches, that they're doing it effectively and efficiently. And we have problems
the rice farmers normally have. Three of the top problems that are not being addressed by the government.
The problems the rice farmers have is to have revolving loans, so that they're able to function, to repair, to have their machinery, to repair it, keep it in order, and so on. The second problem is marketing, to sell their paddy and to get the money.
But they're selling the paddy to the rice millers?
Yeah, but as I told you, look, isn't it better, Dr. Rose, if, that's what I say to you, we can talk about the problems, we need to talk about the solution to the problem. The long-term solution. The long-term solution, Dr. Rose, would be
the rice millers, the rice farmers don't need marketing, because when they reap their harvest, the rice, they sell it to the rice millers.
Yeah, but what price do they get? That is the problem, Dr. Rose. You're missing a very important point. I and Joe spoke about rice not being a profitable thing.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying,
so what I'm trying to say to you,
don't need marketing.
Yeah, but it can be, Dr. Rose, it can be profitable. And that's what I want to talk to you about, to our audience, to understand that if we have a different model of economic development, that rice as an industry, as our staple diet, we're not treating it as a staple diet. It's the main diet. Every single person, Dr. Rose, in this country, across the board, eats rice. Double and eat it 3 times a day. At every function we go, there's rice. So why aren't we treating the rice farmers? Why are we treating them like this? Why are we leaving them in the hands of these unscrupulous rice millers, the hacks and the Nanpasad and people like them? Why? The government needs to all governments need to take control over the rice industry, in the sense that they that they set up the necessary infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, the machinery pool, that their farmers are able to sell, they have a hand in what price they get at the international market. Do you know, Dr. Rose, that we are facing a crisis now, which they're not talking about? That is that the Europeans they've already rejected our rice because it has too much fertilizer, too much weedicide, and too much insecticide. And this is a compound situation because we have not taken care to actually cultivate rice on a scientific basis. Because as Joe said, the soil is overworked. The soil is overworked. When Mr. Burnham talked about building Matthews Ridge as our capital, which would have opened the country into millions of acres of land that have never been touched by human hands. All right? Every single Guyanese would have had at least more than 20 acres of land. And we could have built what Joe talked about. We could build railways, highways to connect the whole country. And we could actually connect to our neighbors around us that have all the facilities and technical skills to help develop our country. Dr. Rose, we cannot develop our country in isolation. We live in a global world. We have to be able to connect to Brazil, to Suriname, to Venezuela, and all these countries to be able to develop our economy in a way in which we can actually raise the level of production, raise the level of our skills and knowledge so that we all can live in peace and harmony with each other. We don't have a vision for people who are elected to power, PNC, PPP, AFC. They don't have a vision and they don't have a mission. These are blind men and blind women walking around with they need sticks to walk with.
Okay, now I want to turn to sugar.
Can we talk more about rice 1 minute, Dr. Rose?
Go ahead.
The only choice we have now is large-scale farming. We got to get away from the small. Even whatever you do, even if you get them loan, they would still have to pay back, right? And to produce rice as it is now government should be giving people loan to go into large acreage and create roads that people can go on these accesses, that you could have farmers going with 1,000, 2,000 acres, that they process their paddy just there. They don't have to run anywhere, and that's how rice would survive. You're cutting the costs down, and you will be more mechanized. Right now, rice is mechanized, but you don't have human beings to operate all these mechanical inputs. You don't have to do all the other things. Therefore, you got to go where you got to do plain spraying the paddy, throw the paddy by plane. You got to pump the water, not take pumps and go here and there. You got one pump, not tractor. You got a pump that pumps the water and you open each depth and you fill the depths as you're going in the land. And that's how you got to do rice now to survive, or else in trouble. I'm worried about this crop here. What happens to farmer with all those bugs and our rice? Then we need fertilizer factory. We need a methanol factory. I've said this a long time ago. We need that so that we can less cost. We don't have to import these things, right? All these things we need to complete, and that should be in place because farmers are facing losses right now, shortage of labor, right? Mechanical cost. And like you rightly said, because of the dry water it added to the cost of living as much as all of this. So we have serious problem in Guyana, some by nature and some by lack of planning by government, you know.
Okay.
And government has to look the oil. You're getting 14.5 drums out of 100. Not a planning.
Okay. I don't want to deviate to oil at the moment. I want to go now to sugar. The former CEO of Mr. C. Snorin Singh, he has now become the ambassador to Brussels. I don't know who will replace him, The rumors have it, but I'm not going to announce any names or call any names. Now, the sugar industry has come a long way under Subsidizing Singh. He has rebuilt the Rosal factory that was closed by the former government, and they were able to produce at least 60,000 tons. The projection for this year is 100,000 tons. And it is estimated that if they produce 100,000 tons, Gaisuku will be able to break at least even. Do you think that's possible, Mr. Prasad?
I don't see it can break even unless I see some math. And I don't know all the math behind it and the cost of production. I know what right now I can tell you, to remove Mr. Subsidizing Singh from there is a big mistake. Mr. Subsidizing Singh, at the beginning to put him there, he didn't have the experience, but he has been there for 4 years. And now he's the best in Guyana to manage that industry. And to remove him is a mistake. Who are you going to put now? Who have that skill of that man? That's one problem Gaisuku has to face. Number two, right? You have the factories you're producing. All these equipment, like the 4 M's, right? You're going to produce so much sugar. You don't have the manpower, the skilled labor, the skill, etc. going in.
They plan to go to mechanization.
Right, you're going to mechanize, but any mechanization, you need manpower too.
But not as many as you have.
Not as many as you did, but you don't have that, and you don't have the skills, etc. And then you can have weather conditions facing you. You can have like the Skelton factory, have differential settlement, right? Like I got a paper here in my hand, Gaisuku options, which dated June 3rd, 2015, which the commission that closed some factories went through. They referred to it during that time, where we talk about short term and long term. And if you close, what do you do? You know, and I appeal that a break-even analysis has to be done. Even recently, when we are talking about sugar and all this government money being pumped into sugar, right? We are not seeing an estimate, even with the 20% confidence interval in probability and statistics, show us a break-even analysis where sugar would break even. We cannot, that's a guess unless we see some numbers. But we know that they're cutting down the cost, and you're not going to have people want to work in the sugar industry, even you mechanize, right? You still will need 20–30% of labor and people in there. And when you cannot, and you mechanize and you don't have those people, they don't want to go and work for government set wage. They want to go and work in the private industry, the construction industry. They want to go work and build streets and roads, right? And because they're making more money. And that's another problem for sugar there. And the price again is fixed on the international market, because what United States, I think someone told me, they don't grow enough sugar, enough rice for their consumption. But what they do, they subsidize their farmers. They grow a little bit, they subsidize their farmers, and they export what they grow quickly and set the world's price, world market price. And then they import your rice cheaply. You know, so they came back again. So that may look logical to me, but I cannot say that that's factual all along the line because I don't know the numbers. So that's the situation, but sugar and rice in trouble.
So you're saying that sugar will never become profitable?
Not for now, in years to come, after the sugar, after the oil money finished and the oil gone, then agriculture would be rising in many ways. But right now, we don't only want rice to go like large scale. We got to give those lands and do research and see what the international market is paying, like for Moranga, what we call Saijan. That's thing we should get people farming hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, and can it. And the leaves, if you go to Florida to buy Saijan leaf, It's so costly. Soursop, mango, avocado, all these things are farms. We need people to do farming there. You need labor to go behind it. You need labor to man machine to clear the land. Even how much you mechanize. You need dams and trenches. And what Mr. Rahman said, we give people money to go into these enterprises. And the rice farmers too. You take them out there because on all these lands there, we got 700,000 people. And if you look all along the coast from Charity to there, that's where they are. And you're going to get 5 million people in next 5, 6 years or 7 years, as soon as the oil money start to flow, like what happened to Trinidad. And anywhere in the world, like Dubai. Dubai was offering jobs at $25,000, $30,000 a month, US, you know, for people short skills and labor and everything else. So in Guyana now, they start already to show you bringing in 500 people, that people are scarce already. So we have problem in opening up all these lands. You got to bring people in. Today, they went with the overinflated budget, the overheated budget, and screw up the whole economy and cost of living. Like you take the teachers.
But the economy, the GDP is the highest in the world. It's humming at about 41, 42%. How can you say it's screwed up?
Listen, the GDP is good. They got the construction people doing lots of things there and lots of things happening there. But when you do that and you don't balance and plan properly, right, a greater sector of the people are suffering. That's no benefit to them.
Dr. Rose, we seem to be discussing always the problems that we face, but not an alternative. Now, I protested vehemently against the Granger administration closing down the Wales sugar industry. We had lots of debates. You can go back to our television program and see lots of debates and discussion where we protested against Nagamutu putting out a pamphlet there justifying the closure of the Wales estate. We were not sentimental about it. We said that, listen, you have to have a strategy as to how you actually deal with human beings. The sugar workers, if they had given the lands to the sugar workers as we had proposed, and they would have continued to plant sugar, gradually they would have found alternative, as Joe was saying, that you could actually use those same lands because they're properly irrigated, well taken care of, and you transform those lands into other crops under the control of the farmers, of the sugar workers who would become farmers. And the reasons why they didn't do that, because they had no vision. They were interested, having spent billions of dollars in the sugar industry. The coalition government did what the last PPP government did. They continued that policy. And it is not about the economics, Dr. Rose. It's about politics. It's about getting people to vote for them. This is what these two parties are interested in. Getting into power, patterning themselves, and have no interest in the ordinary people of this country. No interest whatsoever. So if they had given this, if they had started that model of giving the sugar workers the lands and train them as they go along in managing and so on, and then begin to start to, if they had set up the agricultural industrial bank, the farmers would have been able to borrow money and gradually transform those sugar lands into other crops. And today, we would have reaped a lot of other crops, cash crops and other crops we could have reaped there. And gradually, you need, look, people need ownership of the means of production. If you give people lands and they own it and they control it, they're going to work it with their family and their children. And if they can build their homes and all the kind of things, because look, we have not come out of the low G system where these sugar workers still live in a 10 by 12 house lots in the different areas. And the human beings who have slaved in this country, who should actually have a bit better life. The other problems we have, Dr. Rose, is that we have to look towards the long-term position situation. As Joe quite rightly said, where are we going to get labor when sugar workers' children are becoming doctors and lawyers, going abroad? They want technical jobs and they want to come out of the sugar industry. Where are we going to get labor? I don't buy this argument about Says Narayan managing the estate. I mean, you don't have to go to university to manage anything. People are managing the sugar estates long before that. We have a crisis in the sugar industry because, Dr. Rose, you know basic economics. You do not, if you're running anything, any industry or any business, you don't take money to pump up the business. If it is not profitable, you close it down and you do something else.
But in case of the
madness, Dr. Rose.
In case of the
Dr.
sugar,
Rose,
let me say this to you. Let me say this to you. If you close down the sugar industry, what will become of those communities that depend on the sugar?
I am not talking about closing down. You didn't hear me carefully. I talked about giving the lands and the facilities to the sugar workers and transform the lands, as Joe quite rightly said, into other agricultural crops. That is what I said. I told you, Dr. Rose, you're not listening carefully. I told you that we protested against the closure of the Wales sugar estate. And look at the crisis you have there now. Those lands have not been...
On the other hand, you said that if the sugar industry, if a business is not profitable, then you close it down.
No, but that is what they were doing. That's what they were doing. Both administration, the coalition government and the PPP, and they continue to do that. What we are saying is that you use the land to develop other agricultural crops, which are necessary. In fact, we will have, Dr. Rose, a global food crisis coming on top of us. A global, so the demand for food, Dr. Rose, we should be in the forefront, actually producing all kinds of fruits and vegetables and fish and shrimps and all kinds of things to supply the international market. That's where, as you quite rightly said, Dr. Rose, after oil, what else? You understand? So they don't have any planning. They simply, these are hustlers. They don't have any interest in managing this country and the people of this country. They are hustlers. If tomorrow morning they're out of office, they've actually made themselves well abroad because the money that they have stolen and they've kept it abroad, they will easily go there and live a good life and leave us who are struggling every single day to earn a living. This is the kind of philosophy we have. This is the kind of mentality we have of people, and the PNC is not better. So if we replace the PPP with the PNC, the question is, what economic policy are they going to pursue that are fundamentally different from what is going on at this moment? Tell me.
Yeah, let me explain something here. Like you rightly said, Mr. Raman, in this paper that I have given in June to the Gaisuku options, I said if they close the industry, what are we going to do with 16,000 people? The government has to get them into a co-op for these lands.
Exactly.
And what they do with the government do research to find out on the international market what crops should be grown. And among them, they help them to select a management committee within, say, one factory, one sugar factory, all the lands. Not everybody will be going there, and they create employment for them. And you got a few of them will do managing what they are growing. And these lands, they used to do something called ratooning. What that is, after so many crops, they would flood the lands to get fertile again. You can flood those lands because these sugar estates have good dams and trenches. And they could flood those fields and grow fish, shrimps, and all these things in there in large scale for export market. Do research, check on soursop, Saijan, and do a few other things, right? And you can do that and create employment. But while I advised the government, and I didn't disagree with the government for closing the sugar estates, based on what I have written here, they should have taken care of those people, either give them the land in a group or small farming, growing crops, etc. And they didn't pay them the severance pay. These were all very difficult, and they could have done what Trinidad did, give them 10 days work or 10 days work, like what Guyana is doing. Presently, you talk about the teachers. The teachers' wage.
Pandey gave them lands, 7 to 10 acres of land. I was in Trinidad. My brother took me around.
No.
Showed
At Carson Field, they give some land, but no farming was happening there near the Wallafield Airport too. No farming. People just take the lands and didn't do much farming. They were still importing everything, you know. So giving the lands, that was one thing, but they didn't cultivate it because more work in the construction industry to do, more taxi work, etc. So not much didn't happen. But what I'm saying, in the teaching industry, Dr. Rose, they should have increased, I think, not the wage, but give a cost of living allowance of 20% increase to face the thing now, the cost of living, the inflation. Because if you give them wages and increase their wage, you wouldn't be able to reduce it back if you got other problems.
But cost of living not affecting teachers only, affecting all workers.
Exactly. I'm coming to the police now. All government workers, etc., give them a 20%, all the police should get 30%. Because they take risk, and you will help them to be more honest in what they do and more dedicated. And not the wage, but a living allowance, cost of, Trinidad call it COLA, cost of living allowance.
COLA, yeah. Well, that's the name around the world, not only in Trinidad.
Yeah. So that's some of the things need to be done now, because it's real tough. I bought a chicken in Guyana for 3,000 Guyanese dollars. And in Toronto here, I went and bought this same chicken size, same weight, for 10 Canadian dollars.
How much in Guyanese dollars?
Half the price.
Right.
Right.
The other thing, Dr. Rose, the other thing about the sugar industry, we don't have to produce that, because sugar is not a profitable thing, as you know. We're producing sugar, and we have to subsidize it because it is unprofitable. You don't have to produce that amount of sugar, because what you can do, if you set up good cattle farms, dairy farms, and so on those same lands, you don't have to grow the cane to such an extent to actually become sugar. You cut the cane, and you grind them with machines and so on, and you feed the animals. So that's another aspect that they need, that we could do. But nobody's thinking, Dr. Rose. They don't have thinkers here in this country.
Raman, let me say this. Gaisuku comes under agriculture. Am I right?
Yeah.
There's not a single government in the world or country that does not subsidize agriculture. Israel has the smallest farming agriculture crops in the world, and they subsidize agriculture. United States subsidize agriculture. Canada subsidizes agriculture. Every country subsidizes agriculture.
And are we doing that here?
So Ghana is no different.
No, but are we subsidizing?
It's part
are we subsidizing? No, Dr. Rose. We're not subsidizing agriculture. The sugar industry is
agriculture. Sugar is agriculture.
No. Dr. Rose, the sugar industry is not a private industry. It is not owned by farmers. It is owned by the state. There's a big difference between the two things. So they're not subsidizing the farmers. They're not doing it in the rice industry. They're not doing it in any other sector of the economy. And if they're doing it, it is not a conscious, consistent policy of them to actually do that. But we do not need to follow what the advanced countries are doing by subsidizing farmers, because most of the
not
farmers,
the advanced countries.
Dr.
All
Rose,
countries,
Dr.
all
Rose,
countries
most,
doing that.
Dr. Rose, most of the farmers in the United States of America, Canada, and in Europe are big farmers. The farms are owned by huge farmers owning
But
thousands
Mr.
of acres of
Rahman,
land.
in the United States, they're subsidizing farmers, they're giving farmers money, and nobody complained about the people collecting welfare. They're giving farmers over $60 billion a year not to plant, because they're saying that if these farmers plant, the products will become too cheap on the market.
And is that a good thing to do? The reasons why, Dr. Rose, the reasons why they're doing that is because they have an economic system that does not distribute wealth. Why we don't have those kind of problems in China?
No.
Why? No, I'm asking you. Why don't we have the same type of problems in China?
Because China is not a democracy.
What do you mean China is not a democracy?
Whatever they do in China is controlled by the government.
What do you mean it's not a democracy? You're buying, Dr. Rose, with great respect to you, right? That is nonsense about China is not a democracy and America is a democracy. What is a democracy? A democracy is a country that supports the killing of 31,000 people in a country. People who don't have arms, they can't defend themselves. Is that a democracy, Dr. Rose?
I don't want to go there. Democracy got nothing to do.
But you are making statements that are unsubstantiated.
American democracy is nothing to do with a war fought between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But let me
they have the right. The Americans are arming and training the Israelis.
I don't want to
Can we stop that subject matter, please? We are talking.
I don't want deviation towards the Middle East. I'm saying to you.
But I asked you the question about. I asked you the question, Dr. Rose. I simply asked you, and you're the questioner. So I'm just simply asking you. In the economic situation in China, which has over a billion people, that over the last 20 years have developed their economy at a rate of 9% growth in the economy, that you don't have that crisis that you have in China, that you have in the United States of America, or you have in Europe. These are things that we need. Let's discuss the solution to the problem and not the problem itself. If we don't discuss the solution, Dr. Rose, we will end up every time talking about the problem and have no solution. Our viewers want to know, okay, what is this? These are the crises that they face. They may not be able to understand where it's coming from. We can discuss that. But then at the end of it, Dr. Rose, we have to find solution to these problems.
I understand your solution for sugar workers. He said to give them the land for them to plant the sugar cane. But I'm saying to you,
only, Dr.
Rose, give them the land to plant the sugar cane.
No, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose, no. We said, let me repeat it for the purpose of the records. We said, I and Joe said, and Joe went into more details. He said that you transform, you diversify. You go back to all of their literature, the PNC literature, the PPP literature. They talk about diversification. But where is the diversification taking place, Dr. Rose? There is no diversification.
Diversify into what?
Into growing the things that Joe talked about.
Well, what are they? You tell me, what are they? What are they?
Joe, please, talk about it again.
We talked about that.
You said diversify the sugar industry into what?
The land, if you close the factory, you take the land and look at things like you can do shrimps. Those things are well damped. And
so you say you close the sugar factory down?
Yeah, if it's not profitable and it's sucking money, you can make money, that same system, employment, and make money by doing shrimp, by doing and do a research and find out. You grow Cygen and all these things you can export, use the land, profitable because it's already drainage and irrigation. You're not condemning all the land. Even in sugar at the present time, let me tell you a story. You have people, you're getting mechanized in the field. That's to an extent. Then you still have to get money to transport those sugar, etc., and other things and diseases, etc. Now, when it comes to the factory, you need proper skill. You need proper spares available, because if sugar remain in the plant for 48 hours, you got to dump the cane. You got to get people to look at everything ready to serve. That was not happening. That
Joe,
was also one of the faults.
Talk about diversify the land, but you yourself said that the young people are not planting, they're going to Georgetown to look for jobs.
That's another problem.
A young guy gonna have a family and he's gonna wait for a crop to grow to get money to support his family. If he can earn an hourly or a weekly or a monthly wage.
There are methods to deal with that. Government can
Anyway, Joe, I read in one of your papers that you wrote, you talk about Georgetown being a quadrant city. What is that?
Okay, that's, yeah, okay.
You got to be brief because we got limited time now. We're running out.
Okay. Georgetown, you see the present traffic jam you have there is because the government didn't well plan. You cannot increase too much activities in the city and the density of the population because it's a quadrant city. Quadrant mean where the lighthouse is, you put a dot of a center of a circle and you do a 2-mile radius. You will see that Georgetown bombarded by Demerara River and the Atlantic Ocean. That's a quarter of that circle, meaning a quadrant. And when you don't have a city in place where traffics can go all around in and out, you are in trouble. You are in traffic chaos. And the government is putting 3 hotels on Ogle Road, right? And increasing the property, building 8-floor police station, going to put another hotel, going to give people permits, and that's massive chaos. And what will happen? It lead to crime. People going to leave work and don't meet home on the East Coast until 7 in the night after leaving work at 4:30. Meet home 7 in the night. That's stress, psychological damage. And this is what would lead to crime. People in a few years would slowly become criminals, like what's happening in Trinidad again. A few months ago, 17 murders, one weekend, and the Monday, 4 more. Right? And that's what is happening. So quadrant city means we are a quarter of a circle there, bombarded by that. And when you pump traffic and put so much activities in there, and we are below sea level too, where are you going to put all those sewers? In the air? Where are you going to put the storm water that comes in? You're going to pump it or you're going to flood the city? And we are below the sea level as well. Right? So when you're doing there is wrong. Then you got Vichy. They give land on the Demerara River. Now you cannot, before man was there, the water find its ways. And if you're going to interfere with waterways, you got to do sedimentation studies. And then you're going to have sediments coming there at the mouth of the river. And it's going to cause the Guyanese people, when the oil is even finished, fortunes to get different boats pumping sludge, pumping sediments, pumping sludge. It's be a long-term cost. So quadrant city, etc., and how you deal with that is a very serious problem. Look at the traffic you got there already. That's
okay. We come to the end of the program. Mr. Rahman, you want to give us your final thoughts, your conclusive thoughts?
Dr. Rosa, I thank you for allowing us to have this debate and discussion. I think our emphasis should be finding a solution to our problem. I think Guyanese who are listening to this program and those who have not had an opportunity to listen, they know what their problems are. And they know that they have had this repeat of the same policies and program by previous governments, and they have not been able to resolve any of these problems. So one of the problems we have, talking about democracy, is not having elections, and then a government comes into office, whether the elections is rigged or not, and the government comes into office. What we want, a real democracy is the involvement of all the people in the country, and we are not having that. If we were to, for instance, do a referendum, which is the democratic process, to ask people in this country whether they want the oil to be contract to be renegotiated, Dr. Rose, I am telling you, more than 75% of the people will say yes, they want the oil industry to be, the oil contracts to be renegotiated. That is democracy. We're not having a democratic process, and people like us who criticize this administration, we're seen to be anti-government. Criticizing constructively what is going on in the country, us as patriots, is a necessary thing for our democracy, for freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and the right of us to participate. That those things are not happening, Dr. Rose. And we need to be able to come to grips with these things and to find alternative ways and means of democratizing our society, empowering our people, our youths, our women, and all these type of people. Look, you go to the police station and you report a matter and you get nothing out of it. I have many cases like that where I take people to the police station, you make a report and the police never go there in terms of domestic violence or other forms of violence. So, and the reason for that is because you have this overpowering weight upon us where we have a constitutional dictatorship, where whoever comes into office, they manage the country on the basis of a constitution that doesn't allow the democracy to flow and the people to participate. So that's what we need. And I wish that you can have more of these type of discussions where people can learn and people can be able to debate.
I will. Mr. Prasad, your closing remarks.
Guyana have some oil, and we expect to have a boom in the economy. And as I have said in the past, a short-lived boom. Now, what is happening? You need planning of every aspect, agriculture, not only sugar, etc. We got to look at traffic. We got to look, first thing should have been done is land use planning. So you know where you're going to have your factories, where you're going to have your industries, like you have the Demerara River on both sides should be 1 mile in industrial zone because the Demerara River is your export and import route. Now, all these planning is not done. Then you're going to have education system. If you don't do land use, where are you going to put your schools? You have GPL problem. The government should right now cater to double electricity supply. And in the meantime, you're going to put everything in place. It will take 2 or 3 years. Airport, you got to get a plan for terminal 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to build as you're going along. You would need customs, airport, you need weight limits on trucks. You need the police system to financial managing, auditing. There's so much to be done there. And government has to put this in place. Land use planning is first. Where are you going to build this? Where are you going to put that? And that's how you're going to know how your agricultural stuff would come in and how you're going to do canning factories, right, for export. How are you going to export it in the market? So lots of planning has to be done, lots of it. And I'm not seeing anything happening just in Georgetown, construction going here and there, people coming in, short of housing, rising costs for rental, etc. They got to do better than that. And you can't, if you don't do, and you need a new city somewhere, you know? Anyway, that's my opinion.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Today is April Fool's Day, and I hope all the jokes were shared properly in Guyana. Last week was Pagua, and I actually forgot or time didn't permit to wish everyone a happy Pagua festival. So I'm taking the opportunity to wish everyone in Guyana a happy Pagua festival. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Mr. Prasad and Mr. Rahman, it was a pleasure having the two of you tonight. At least you have been able to shine light or speak pointedly on a number of issues that are wrong in the agriculture sector, and we must find solutions to, that are wrong in the rice and sugar industry, and we must find solutions to. So I hope for all who are listening, we should all work to find solutions to these problems indeed. And I must thank Noir Singh for making this program available. Ryan Gobin and Devin Dissoon, also our technical directors, and to all our listeners and our sponsors. A very thanks to all of you for tuning in and for making this program available too. Now, as I said, I always have two things to say at the end of the program. I would like to see the retirement age increase to at least 62 years old, from 55 to 62, like the rest of the Caribbean countries. And I'd also like to see our internet system. It is not getting better. Every time I call someone in Guyana, it's always stop and go and reconnect, stop and go and reconnect. I don't know the reason or reasons for those things. So those are the things I would like to see improve. But I must give credence to a police officer at Wim Police Station, who's someone from the United States get caught with an illegal gun and ammunition in it. And he offered to bribe the police officer $500,000. The police refused and instead locked him up. So right now he's at Wim Police Station locked up for offering the police a bribe and for having an illegal weapon. So that's something that I'm proud of the police officers, and it's about time that they do not accept money from anyone. Do your job and do it respectably and responsibly, and you'll get all the kudos in this world. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening. Mr. Prasad, Mr. Rahman, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure having both of you here tonight, and I hope everyone learned a lot about the rice industry, about the sugar industry, about planning, and about everything else. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr.